The Vance estate stood on a hill above the city like a palace from another age. It was a place of polished stone, glass walls, and gardens that seemed to go on forever. At night, its lights shimmered like a beacon, and during the day, sunlight spilled through the high windows, touching every polished surface. From far away, it looked like a dream, but inside, there was one corner of the mansion that felt more like a quiet cage. In a wide room on the top floor, with a view of the entire valley, Ela Vance sat in a sleek, motorized chair. She was 17 years old and had never taken a step in her life. Her legs were thin and pale from years without use, her movements careful and limited. She had been born with a rare neurological condition that no medicine or surgery had been able to cure. Over the years, her father had hired the best doctors, invested in advanced treatments, and even sponsored experimental research, but nothing had changed. Her father, Gregory Vance, was one of the richest men in the world. His name appeared in news reports about global business deals and energy projects. He was a man of vision and ambition, always looking for the next challenge. He loved his daughter deeply, but his love often came in the form of expensive gifts. The latest technology or rare experiences brought into the mansion for her to enjoy. He wanted her to feel she had the best life possible, yet he was rarely home for more than a few days at a time. Ela did not mind the gifts, but she longed for something else. She wanted to feel the wind on her face without the barrier of a balcony. She wanted to walk on grass, touch the earth with her own feet, and run without fear of falling. She wanted freedom, and no amount of wealth could buy it for her. Her daily life was quiet. She woke each morning to the soft chime of the mansion's AI assistant, which opened the curtains to reveal a breathtaking sunrise over the valley. Her holographic tutors appeared at scheduled hours to teach her everything from mathematics to history. Her meals were prepared by a rotating team of chefs, each one trained in cuisines from all over the world. The gardens were kept in perfect condition by automated systems, and the fountains always ran with crystal-clear water. And yet, for all the perfection around her, the air in her room often felt heavy. She sometimes sat by the tall glass wall for hours, watching the world beyond the estate. She saw delivery drones flying over the city, children playing in the park below, and people walking along the streets with an ease she could only imagine. She wondered what it must feel like to live without thinking about how to move from one room to another. One chilly morning in late autumn, the house staff was busier than usual. The sound of rolling carts, footsteps on polished floors, and quiet voices filled the hallways. From her room, Ela could hear the faint hum of the elevator as it went up and down. She did not think much of it at first. Her father often hired new staff members, and people came and went without affecting her routine. But that morning felt different. There was a sense of expectation in the air, as if the household was preparing for something unusual. Through her open doorway, she caught sight of Mrs. Bell, the head housekeeper, moving briskly toward the front entrance. She was smoothing her uniform and checking her watch, something she only did when someone important was about to arrive. Curious, Ela steered her chair out into the hallway and followed the sound of activity. She moved slowly, her chair's soft hum blending with the distant sound of voices. By the time she reached the landing that overlooked the grand foyer, the front doors were opening. A tall figure stepped inside. He wore a perfectly tailored black butler's uniform that fit him as if it had been made for him alone. His posture was straight, his stride measured, and his dark gloves gleamed faintly under the light from the chandelier. His hair was neatly trimmed, and his face was calm with sharp, focused eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the room. Mrs. Bell greeted him with a respectful tone Ela had not heard her use with other staff. She led him toward her father's study, but not before Ela noticed something unusual. The man's gaze flicked upward for the briefest moment, meeting hers across the open space. There was no awkwardness, no quick look away. Instead, there was a steady calm in his eyes, as if he recognized her in some way. Ela felt an unexpected jolt of curiosity. New staff rarely caught her attention, but there was something about the man's presence that seemed different. He moved with quiet precision, as though every step was part of a plan. Even the way he carried a small leather case in one hand suggested a sense of purpose. She waited until he had vanished from sight before returning to her room. The mansion settled back into its usual rhythm, but the image of the man in black lingered in her thoughts. Later that day, she asked Mrs. Bell who he was, but the housekeeper simply said he was the new butler, hired by her father, and offered no further details. That night, as Isla sat by her window, she saw the man again. He was walking through the garden paths with a lantern in hand, checking the gates and speaking briefly with the security team. Even at a distance, his movements were graceful and exact, like someone used to working under rules that no one else understood. She told herself it was silly to be interested in a butler. After all, staff came and went. Yet she could not help but wonder why her father had hired him, and why the man seemed so unlike anyone she had ever met. In the days to come, Isla would learn that the arrival of the new butler was more than just a change in household routine. His presence would bring answers to questions she had never dared to ask, and open doors she had never thought could be unlocked. She could not have known then that he would change her life in ways that seemed impossible, and that the first step toward her freedom had already been taken the moment he walked through those doors. The following morning was brighter than usual. Sunlight poured through the tall glass windows, filling the mansion with a golden glow. The air felt fresh after a light rain in the night, and the garden below shimmered with drops of water still, clinging to the flowers and leaves. Isla sat at her breakfast table, a tray of warm food in front of her. She ate slowly, her thoughts wandering to the man she had seen the day before. When she asked Mrs. Bell again about him, the housekeeper gave a short reply. His name was Elijah Kane. He had been recommended personally to her father, though Mrs. Bell did not say by whom. She added that he would be taking over many responsibilities around the house, including overseeing security, managing supplies, and attending to special requests from Mr. Vance himself. It was clear from her tone that Elijah was not just another ordinary servant. After breakfast, Isla guided her chair toward the central hall. She wanted to see him again, though she told herself she was only curious because he was new. The hall was quiet, except for the soft ticking of the tall grandfather clock and the faint hum of cleaning drones. Then she heard steady footsteps. Approaching from the opposite end, Elijah appeared from around the corner carrying a slim black folder. His uniform was perfectly pressed, and his gloves looked freshly polished. When he saw her, he paused and gave a small, polite bow. "Good morning, Miss Vance," he said in a calm voice. She nodded in reply. "Good morning, Mr. Kane. You may call me Elijah if you wish," he said. His voice was deep but smooth, carrying a kind of steady confidence. There was nothing hurried in his manner. Even his smallest movement seemed deliberate, as if every gesture had meaning. "Are you settling in?" Isla asked, trying to sound casual. "Yes, miss. The mansion is well maintained, and the staff are efficient. Your father has entrusted me with several duties, and I intend to carry them out with precision." There was no arrogance in his words, only certainty. Isla noticed how his eyes met hers without hesitation, yet without any trace of disrespect. She felt oddly at ease in his presence, even though they had only just met. Later that day, she saw him again, this time in the library. He was standing on a tall ladder, placing books back onto the shelves. The way he moved was unusual. His balance was perfect, and he seemed completely unbothered by the height. When one of the smaller ladders slipped slightly, he adjusted it, without even looking down, his hand steady as if guided by instinct. He noticed her watching and offered a slight smile. "Do you enjoy reading, Miss Vance?" "Yes," she said, "especially history." He climbed down with quiet ease and handed her a book he had just shelved. It was an old volume about the early years of human space travel. "This one has stories of courage and determination," he said. "I think you might like it." She turned the book over in her hands. The leather cover was worn but still strong, the gold letters on the spine catching the light. She thanked him, and he returned to his work without another word. Over the next few days, Isla began to notice more about him. He never seemed tired, no matter how many tasks he completed. He could carry heavy boxes with one hand as though they weighed nothing. When speaking with staff, he was polite but direct, giving instructions that were clear and efficient. There was no wasted movement, no uncertainty. One afternoon, a delivery arrived earlier than expected. The security gate camera showed the large truck waiting outside. Normally, it would take several staff members to unload such a shipment, but Elijah stepped forward and began moving the crates himself. They were large and looked heavy, yet he lifted them with ease, stacking them neatly in the storage area. Isla watched from her balcony, her curiosity growing stronger. She also noticed how aware he seemed of everything around him. If a servant dropped something in the hallway, he was there within moments to pick it up. If the wind blew open a side door, he was already closing it before the alarm could sound. It was as if he had an invisible map of the mansion in his mind at all times. One evening, her father returned home from a short business trip. Gregory Vance greeted Elijah warmly, something that surprised Isla. Her father was rarely warm to new staff. They spoke in private for some time, and when Gregory came to see Isla later, he seemed unusually calm, almost reassured about something. "Do you like the new butler?" her father asked. "He is different," Isla said carefully. Gregory gave a small smile. "Yes, he is. You will find him useful, Isla. He is here to make sure this house runs perfectly and that you are safe." Her father rarely spoke about safety. The estate was already one of the most secure places in the country. His words made her wonder why. Extra protection was needed now. That night, as the wind moved through the trees outside, Isla saw Elijah once again walking the garden paths. This time, instead of a lantern, he carried a small device that projected a faint blue light ahead of him. He paused at the far edge of the property, scanning the perimeter before moving on. In the days that followed, small moments continued to catch Isla's attention. Once, when a vase slipped from a servant's hands, Elijah crossed the room and caught it before it hit the floor. It happened so quickly she was not sure she had seen it correctly. Another time, she noticed him adjust a wall panel near the study, his hands moving with the precision of someone who knew far more about the mansion systems than a new employee should. Despite these strange details, Elijah never acted as if he had anything to hide. He spoke politely to her whenever they met, sometimes sharing a quiet observation about the weather or the books in the library. He never pried into her life, yet somehow seemed to know when she was tired, bored, or in need of company. Isla began to feel that his arrival was the beginning of something important, though she could not yet explain why. There was a quiet strength in him, a certainty that made her believe he could handle any problem. She wondered if her father had hired him for reasons beyond the usual duties of a butler. As autumn deepened and the leaves in the garden turned gold and red, Isla's curiosity grew stronger. Elijah Kane was not like anyone she had met before, and she had a feeling that one day soon she would see him do something that would change her understanding of what was possible. A week after Elijah Kane arrived, life inside the Vance mansion seemed smoother than ever. Meals were served on time without a single delay, the gardens looked even more beautiful than before, and the usual small problems in the household seemed to vanish before anyone noticed them. The staff respected Elijah, following his instructions without question, and even Mrs. Bell admitted in a quiet voice that he had made her work easier. For Isla, the days felt more interesting. She found herself watching Elijah whenever he was nearby, curious about how someone could move with such confidence and grace. He seemed to appear exactly where he was needed. If a door stuck, he was there to fix it. If a delivery arrived, he was there to handle it. If her father called for him, Elijah would appear almost instantly, no matter where he had been in the house. One morning, Isla was in the gallery room, which displayed rare paintings and sculptures collected by her father over the years. A cleaner had accidentally moved a ladder too close to one of the large marble statues. The ladder began to tip, and a heavy frame balanced on its top rung started to fall toward the floor. Isla barely had time to react before Elijah stepped forward from the far end of the room. His arm shot out, and in a single movement he caught the frame in midair and steadied the ladder before it could crash down. The cleaner gasped in surprise, thanking him repeatedly. Elijah only nodded, placing the frame gently on a table as if the moment had been nothing unusual. Isla watched him closely, wondering how he had moved so quickly across the room without making a sound. Later that day, she saw him in the grand kitchen, speaking quietly to the head chef. He was helping adjust the settings on a precision cooking unit, his fingers moving swiftly across the control panel. The chef stood back, clearly impressed. When Isla rolled closer, Elijah glanced up and gave her a small nod of greeting. "Is it working now?" she asked. "Yes, Miss Vance," he replied. "The temperature sensors were misaligned. They will function properly now." He spoke as if such technical skills were part of his everyday duties, but Isla knew very few butlers who could repair advanced kitchen equipment with such ease. She wanted to ask him how he knew so much, but decided to wait for the right moment. 2 days later, the right moment seemed to come. She was in the library again, reading the book Elijah had given her about early space exploration. Outside, the autumn wind was strong, rattling the tall glass panes. She was so absorbed in the story that she did not notice Elijah enter until he was standing beside her. "Do you enjoy the book?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "It is full of amazing things. I cannot imagine what it must have been like to leave Earth for the first time." "It takes courage to step into the unknown," Elijah replied. "But often, those who do are the ones who shape the future." His words made her look up from the pages. There was something in his tone, a quiet certainty, as if he knew what it felt like to take such steps himself. Before she could ask more, a loud crash came from the hallway outside. They both turned toward the sound. Isla's chair hummed softly as she moved toward the door, but Elijah reached it before she could. When she entered the hallway, she saw one of the security guards picking himself up from the floor. A large crate had fallen from a delivery cart, spilling electronic components across the marble tiles. Another guard tried to lift the crate, grunting with effort. Without hesitation, Elijah stepped forward, bent down, and lifted the crate as though it weighed very little. He set it aside with careful precision, then began helping the guards gather the scattered parts. Isla noticed how his hands moved quickly yet gently, placing each delicate component back in the padded trays without causing any damage. The guards thanked him, clearly surprised by his strength. That night, as she sat by her window, Isla could not stop thinking about the events she had seen. She began to realize that Elijah's unusual abilities were not limited to quick reflexes or quiet movements. He seemed to have knowledge in many areas: mechanics, technology, security, even art preservation. It was as if he had trained for dozens of different jobs before becoming a butler. One evening, soon after, she was returning to her room when she passed the security control room. The door was slightly open, and inside she saw Elijah standing in front of a wall of glowing screens. He was studying live camera feeds from around the property, his hands moving over the controls with the confidence of someone who had used them for years. Without looking away from the screens, he said, "It is not safe to linger in this doorway. Miss Vance, please step inside if you wish to speak, so you are not seen by the cameras in the main hall." She hesitated but moved her chair inside. "Why would it matter if I am seen in the main hall?" "It is a habit," Elijah said simply. In some places, it is best to avoid certain lines of sight. Even here, where you are safe, caution is wise. She frowned slightly, trying to understand his meaning, but before she could ask, he changed the subject. Would you like me to escort you back to your room? Yes, she said after a moment. As they moved through the quiet halls, Isla glanced at him and wondered again who he truly was. Her father had told her Elijah was here to keep the house running and to protect her, but she was beginning to think there was more to it than that. She had seen him handle heavy crates with ease, move faster than she thought possible, and repair technology that others could not fix. His knowledge seemed endless, and his awareness of his surroundings was unlike anyone she had ever met. When they reached her door, Elijah gave a small bow. "Good evening, Miss Vance." "Good evening," she replied, watching him walk away down the hall. The mansion had always been a place of quiet routine for Isla, but with Elijah's arrival, that routine was shifting. He was more than he appeared to be, and she knew it was. Only a matter of time before she discovered exactly what that meant. The weather had been calm all week, but on Friday evening a sudden storm rolled in from the west. Dark clouds gathered over the valley, and strong winds rattled the tall glass windows of the Vance mansion. The security lights along the garden paths flickered as the first drops of rain began to fall. Isla sat in her room, reading, while the sound of distant thunder filled the air. Just after sunset, the power went out. The lights in her room blinked once and then went dark. The hum of the heating system stopped, and the electronic clock on her desk went blank. A moment later, the emergency lights switched on, casting a pale glow through the hallways. Isla was used to short power cuts, but this one felt different. The mansion's systems were designed to handle storms, and she could not remember the last time the lights had failed completely. From her doorway, she could hear hurried footsteps and the voices of staff moving quickly through the halls. The AI assistant was silent, which meant the central system was down. That alone was enough to make her uneasy. Then she heard Mrs. Bell's voice calling for Elijah. It was urgent, sharper than usual. Isla guided her chair toward the landing, moving carefully in the dim light. Below her, in the main hall, she saw Elijah speaking to Mrs. Bell and one of the security guards. His face was calm, but his posture was tense, as if he had just received important news. What happened? Isla called down. Elijah looked up at her. "Miss Vance, please remain in your room. There has been a malfunction in the lower levels. I will take care of it." She wanted to ask more, but he was already moving toward the service elevator, his black uniform disappearing into the shadows. Curiosity pulled her to follow at a distance. She kept to the upper hallways, listening to the faint sounds of movement below. Through a glass wall that looked into part of the research wing, she saw faint flashes of light. Her father's private laboratory was located there, containing projects that few people were allowed to see. Isla had been told it was off-limits for her safety, but tonight the sealed doors were open, and the glow from inside was brighter than the emergency lights in the rest of the mansion. She rolled closer, stopping at the edge of the security barrier. From her position, she could see part of the laboratory. In the center of the room stood a large cylindrical device. It was one of her father's experimental energy cores, designed to store and release massive amounts of power. It was humming, loudly, and the panels on its surface were glowing in uneven pulses. Isla had heard enough from her father to know that this was not normal. 2 technicians were working frantically at the control station, but the core's hum grew louder. One of the screens flashed a warning in bold red letters. The technicians exchanged worried glances, speaking in low voices that she could not hear. Elijah entered the room with quick, steady steps. He did not run, but his movements were faster than usual. One of the technicians pointed to the warning display, speaking rapidly. Elijah listened for a few seconds, then set down the small black case he carried. He opened it and took out a compact tool that looked unlike anything Isla had seen before. Without hesitation, he crossed the floor toward the energy core. The hum was now so strong that Isla could feel it through the floor beneath her chair. The technicians called after him, but Elijah did not stop. He stepped up onto the platform surrounding the core, pressed a sequence of buttons on the device in his hand, and then reached directly toward one of the glowing panels. A faint blue light surrounded his gloves as he touched the panel. The hum dropped in pitch, then rose again sharply, as if the machine was resisting whatever he was doing. The technicians watched in silence, clearly unsure whether to help or stand back. Isla's heart pounded. She knew that the core stored more power than an entire city block used in a day. If it failed, the damage could spread far beyond the mansion. She gripped the arms of her chair, unable to look away. Then she saw something that made her breath catch. A loose cable at the far side of the platform had started to spark. To reach it, Elijah would have to cross a narrow gap where part of the safety railing was missing. It was at least 10 meters from one side to the other. The platform swayed slightly from the vibration of the core. One of the technicians shouted, a warning, but Elijah did not pause. He stepped back, then moved forward in a powerful leap that carried him across the gap. Isla's eyes widened. It was not possible for an ordinary person to jump that far, yet Elijah landed lightly, almost, without a sound. He crouched for a moment, then stood and reached for the sparking cable. With precise movements, he used the tool to secure the connection and lock it in place. The change was immediate. The uneven glow of the panels steadied, and the hum of the machine began to fade. The warning lights on the control screen switched to green. The technicians let out audible sighs of relief. Elijah returned to the main side of the platform, this time walking across a narrow maintenance beam as if it were a solid bridge. He placed the tool back in his case and spoke briefly to the technicians, who nodded with gratitude. From her place at the edge of the barrier, Isla could not believe what she had just seen. His leap across the platform had been quick and effortless, and his calm under pressure had been unlike anything she had witnessed before. It was as though he had known exactly what to do from the moment he entered the room. When Elijah finally left the laboratory, he glanced in her direction. She realized. He must have known she was there the entire time. He did not smile or speak. Instead, he gave a slight nod, as if to say that everything was under control, and then continued down the hallway toward the security wing. Isla remained at the barrier for several minutes, trying to make sense of what had happened. The image of his leap replayed in her mind. No ordinary man could have done that, yet Elijah had moved as if it were the most natural thing in the world. That night, she could not sleep. The storm outside had passed, leaving the air still and quiet, but her thoughts were restless. She had seen Elijah do something that defied explanation, and she knew it was only a matter of time before she found out how such a thing was possible. The next morning, the mansion was quiet. The storm had cleared, leaving the sky bright and the air crisp. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, touching the polished floors with a golden glow. The events of the previous night still filled Isla's mind. She had barely slept, her thoughts circling around the image of Elijah leaping across the gap in her father's laboratory. At breakfast, her father seemed calm, as if nothing unusual had happened. He read through his morning reports and spoke briefly to Mrs. Bell about the day's schedule. Isla waited for him to mention the power failure or the trouble in the lab, but he said nothing. When she finally asked about it, Gregory Vance gave her a reassuring smile. Everything is fine. Elijah handled it. There was no danger. His tone was final, the kind that ended conversations, but it only made Isla more curious. She knew what she had seen, and no matter what her father said, it had been far from ordinary. Later that day, while the rest of the staff was busy with their duties, Isla went to the library. She hoped to find Elijah there, as he sometimes checked the shelves in the afternoons. The room was empty at first, But a few minutes later, she heard the soft sound of footsteps. Elijah entered, carrying a small black case similar to the one he had used in the lab. He noticed her watching him and gave a slight bow. "Good afternoon, Miss Vance." "Good afternoon," she replied, then hesitated before speaking again. "I saw you last night, in the lab. You fixed the energy core." He paused, his expression unreadable. "I did what was necessary to prevent a larger problem." "That leap you made," she said, her voice firm. "No one can jump that far. At least no ordinary person. How did you do it?" For a moment he did not answer. He closed the case and set it on a table, then stepped closer. His voice was calm, but there was a weight in his tone. "You are correct. What you saw was not something an ordinary person could do." Isla's heart beat faster. "Then who are you, really?" Elijah studied her for a few seconds, as if deciding whether to speak. Finally, he said, "Your father trusts you. I believe you can keep what I tell you between us." She nodded without hesitation. "I will." He took a seat across from her, his posture as straight as ever. "I am not only a butler. I am what you might call an enhanced envoy. I was born human, but I come from a place far from here, a human colony that exists beyond Mars. Our people develop technology that can improve the body and mind in ways that Earth has not yet reached." Isla's eyes widened. "A colony beyond Mars? I thought no one lived past the asteroid belt." "That is what most of Earth believes," Elijah said. "The truth is, several colonies exist, hidden from public knowledge. They were formed many years ago by those who wanted to explore further and build a different kind of society. My colony is one of them. We have worked in secret to avoid political conflict with Earth's governments." She leaned forward slightly. "And why are you here, in this house?" "Your father's work is important," Elijah said. "The energy core you saw last night is more than just an invention. It has the potential to stabilize power supply for entire nations without harmful waste. If completed, it could prevent the kind of shortages and conflicts that have troubled Earth for decades. My mission is to ensure your father and his work are protected until the project is finished." Isla thought about the quiet way Elijah moved through the mansion, how he seemed to notice everything, how nothing ever surprised him. "So you were trained for this?" "Yes," he replied. "My enhancements allow me to move faster, react quicker, and endure conditions that would harm most people. I also carry knowledge in various fields: engineering, security, medical response, so I can adapt to many situations." She let his words sink in. "Then last night you knew exactly what to do." "I have seen similar malfunctions before," Elijah said. "The device I used is from my colony. Earth has nothing like it yet. Without it, repairing the core in time would have been much more difficult." Isla was quiet for a moment. She had imagined many explanations for Elijah's skill, but nothing like this. "Why tell me now?" she asked finally. "Because you saw too much to be satisfied with simple answers," Elijah said. "You are intelligent, Miss Vance, and I believe it is better you know the truth than wonder endlessly." She considered. This then asked, "Does my father know all of this?" "He knows most of it," Elijah said. "He is aware that I am from beyond Mars and that my purpose is to safeguard him and his family. What he does not know are the full details of my training or the extent of my abilities. That knowledge is reserved for those who must carry it." Isla thought of her father's calmness at breakfast. Perhaps he had been reassured simply because Elijah was there. "And when your mission is over?" "When the energy project is complete and secure, I will return to my colony," Elijah said. His voice was steady, but there was a faint hint of something else. Perhaps regret or acceptance. She looked at him for a long moment. "You are not like anyone I have ever met." "That is likely true," he said with a small nod. "But in the end, I am still human, Miss Vance. My duty is simply different from most. He stood and picked up the black case. For now, I will continue to protect this house and its people. You need not be concerned about last night. The core is stable. As he turned to leave, Isla felt a mix of wonder and unease. The mystery that had surrounded Elijah was now replaced by an even greater truth. He was part of something far larger than the mansion or her father's business. His presence here was tied to a future she had never imagined. She knew she would keep his secret. But she also knew that this was only the beginning. There was more to his abilities than he had told her, and she intended to learn the rest before his mission was over. That evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Isla sat by her window again. The garden paths were lit by soft lights, and in the distance she saw Elijah making his rounds. His steps were steady, his figure outlined against the fading light. She watched him move and thought of the leap he had made in the lab, the impossible gap he had crossed without fear. For the first time in her life, she felt a spark of hope. If such things were possible for him, perhaps there were things once thought impossible for her that could still become real. The days that followed Elijah's revelation felt different for Isla. The mansion seemed quieter, yet every corner held the memory of his impossible abilities. She could not stop thinking about the lab, the leap across the gap, and the calm certainty with which he had acted. Now that she knew he was not entirely human, she saw everything in a new light. His presence no longer felt strange. It felt necessary. One afternoon, she found him in the library, arranging a series of ancient maps and technical diagrams. His movements were careful, almost like a dance, and the sunlight falling through the windows highlighted the sharp lines of his uniform. Isla approached him, her curiosity stronger than ever. "May I speak with you, Elijah?" she asked. He looked up and gave a small nod. "Of course, Miss Vance." She guided her chair closer. "I have been thinking about what you told me, about your colony, your abilities, and the work you are here to protect. It is amazing. But I cannot stop thinking, what if I could do something too?" Elijah studied her closely. His calm expression remained, but she saw a faint spark of interest in his eyes. "Do you mean something beyond your current limitations?" "Yes," she said softly. "I have spent my life unable to walk. I have dreamed of standing, of walking outside in the garden, of running. I know it may sound impossible, but after seeing what you can do, I feel like maybe there is a chance." Elijah placed the maps aside and leaned forward slightly. "There is a chance, Miss Vance, but it requires courage. What I am about to offer is experimental. It comes from my colony, a neural exoskeleton designed to work with the body's nervous system. It has never been used on Earth before, and it carries risks. It may succeed, or it may fail. You must be ready for both outcomes." Isla felt her heart race. This was what she had been waiting for. The possibility that her life could change forever. "What do I need to do?" she asked. Elijah stood and walked to the far side of the library. He returned carrying a sleek device, small and carefully folded. Its surface was polished black metal with delicate lines of silver that hinted at advanced circuits inside. "This is the exoskeleton," he explained. "It will attach to your legs and integrate with your nervous system. With guidance, it can allow you to walk." Isla's eyes widened as she reached out. "It looks amazing. But what if it hurts?" "There may be discomfort at first," Elijah said. "Your muscles and nerves are not used to this type of movement. Patience and focus will be required. I will guide you every step of the way. You will not be alone." For several hours, Elijah explained how the exoskeleton worked. He showed her how the sensors would detect even the smallest intention of movement, how the suit would support her weight and correct balance, and how she could gradually learn to walk. Isla listened intently, absorbing every detail. Finally, he asked, "Are you ready to try?" Isla hesitated. Fear and hope mixed inside her. She had lived her entire life in a wheelchair, and now someone was offering her a chance to walk. It was thrilling, but also terrifying. I think I am ready," she said at last. Elijah guided her to a private training room, a space she had never seen before. It was long and open, with smooth floors and padded walls, designed for safety. The exoskeleton was laid out carefully on a platform. Elijah helped her into it, adjusting straps and sensors to fit her legs perfectly. The suit felt cool against her skin, light yet firm. When she stood, she felt a strange weight, like an unfamiliar balance shifting through her body. She tried to take a step. At first, her legs felt stiff and heavy. She wobbled slightly, and her breath quickened. Elijah was beside her, steadying her and giving gentle instructions. "Focus on one step at a time," he said. "Your legs will remember what to do if your mind guides them." Isla concentrated, feeling the suit respond to the smallest thoughts. Slowly, she took a second step, then a third. Her confidence grew with each movement. She realized that the suit was not doing everything for her. It amplified what her body could already imagine. Her muscles were learning, remembering how to act after years of inactivity. After several minutes, she managed to move across half the training room. Her face shone with excitement and disbelief. "I am walking!" she exclaimed, her voice full of wonder. Elijah nodded, his usual calm expression showing a rare flicker of satisfaction. "Very good, Miss Vance. You are doing exceptionally well. Remember, do not rush. Each step builds your strength and balance." For the next several hours, she practiced under his careful guidance. The initial stiffness gave way to smoother movements. She learned to shift her weight, to control her balance, and to take steps more confidently. Each success made her feel stronger, more alive, and more hopeful. By evening, Isla could walk across the entire training room without holding on to anything. Her movements were not perfect, but they were steady. Tears filled her eyes as she realized she had accomplished something she had thought impossible her entire life. Elijah watched quietly, then said, "This is only the beginning. With continued practice, your walking will become natural. Your body will adapt, and you will be able to move freely outside this room." Isla looked at him and smiled, her heart racing with gratitude. "Thank you, Elijah. I never imagined this could happen. You believed it was possible before I did." He shook his head gently. "I only guided you. The strength and courage came from you. Never forget that, Miss Vance. The impossible is only the next step you choose to take." That night, she sat by her window looking out at the gardens. The air smelled of wet grass and flowers, and the mansion felt brighter than ever. She imagined walking outside, feeling the earth beneath her feet, and exploring the world without limits. For the first time in her life, she believed that anything was possible. Elijah walked past the window along the garden path, his figure calm and composed. Isla smiled, knowing that the journey she had begun today was only possible because of him. Yet she also understood something more. The courage to walk had always been inside her, waiting for the moment to be awakened. Her first steps had been taken, and the world outside the mansion would soon know her strength. The morning sun bathed the Vance mansion in warm light. Birds chirped in the gardens, and a gentle breeze stirred the flowers and leaves. For the first time in her life, Isla felt an excitement she had never known before. Today was the day she would leave the training room and take her first steps outside. Elijah arrived at her room as promised. He was calm, composed, and ready to guide her. He carried the neural exoskeleton device, checking its sensors and adjustments carefully. Isla's heart raced as she prepared to put it on. The suit felt familiar now, a part of her, rather than a foreign machine. She could feel its support, like a quiet strength running through her legs. "You are ready, Miss Vance," Elijah said. "Your steps inside the mansion were excellent. Outside will be slightly different, but I will be by your side at all times." Isla nodded, gripping the small handles of her walking chair one last time. "I am ready," she said. Together, they moved through the long hallways toward the front doors. Staff members were gathered at a distance, watching silently, knowing something extraordinary was about to happen. Mrs. Bell held her hands tightly, whispering words of encouragement. Isla felt a wave of warmth. The house had always been her safe place, but today it would become the start of a new life. Elijah opened the massive front doors. The light of morning spilled into the hall, and the garden beyond seemed more alive than she had ever remembered. Dew glistened on the grass, and the flowers swayed in the soft breeze. The distant hills looked inviting, and for the first time, she imagined herself walking freely through them. With Elijah on one side, she placed her foot onto the stone pathway. The neural exoskeleton responded instantly, supporting her weight and adjusting to her movements. Her heart leaped with joy. One step, then another, then another. Each movement felt new and thrilling. The staff watched silently as Isla moved steadily along the path. Her body felt strong, and her legs began to learn the rhythm of walking again. Every step was a victory, every movement a proof that years of dreaming could finally come true. Elijah matched her pace, guiding her when necessary, but allowing her to lead. "Balance your weight evenly," he said softly. "Breathe and trust yourself." She did. And with each breath she felt lighter, freer, and more alive. Soon she reached the fountain at the center of the garden. Water sparkled in the morning, sun, and the sound of its splashing filled the air. Isla stopped for a moment, taking in the beauty around her. She had seen the gardens many times from her windows, but never like this. Never with the possibility to move through them herself. Her father emerged from the house, walking quickly to her side. His face was filled with emotion. "Isla," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "you are walking. I cannot believe it." She turned toward him, smiling. "I am walking, Father, and it is because of Elijah and the exoskeleton, but mostly, it is because I chose to try." Gregory Vance nodded, pride shining in his eyes. "You have always had the courage, Isla. Today, you showed it to everyone." Elijah stood slightly behind her, watching quietly. "You have taken the first steps, Miss Vance. Continue at your own pace. Every day it will become easier, and soon you will walk without thought, freely and naturally." Encouraged, Isla began moving toward the edge of the garden. The path curved gently, leading to a small hill where the view of the valley opened wide. She felt the grass beneath her feet, soft and cool, and the earth solid and steady. Each step made her heart sing. She had imagined this moment for years, but the reality was far more beautiful than any dream. The staff and her father followed behind at a safe distance. Their faces were filled with wonder, their eyes reflecting pride and amazement. Isla realized that walking was not only her own achievement, but something that inspired everyone around her. She reached the top of the small hill and paused. The valley stretched wide and green, dotted with forests and fields, and the sky above was endless. Isla raised her arms slightly, letting the breeze touch her face. She could feel freedom in a way she had never known before, and a sense of possibility that went beyond the garden, beyond the mansion, beyond even her imagination. "Elijah," she said, turning toward him, "thank you for believing in me and guiding me. I could not have done this without you." He bowed his head slightly, his calm expression showing the faintest hint of pride. "It was your courage, Miss Vance. I only helped you see it. Remember, the first step is always the hardest, but you took it. From now on, every step will lead you further. For several moments she stood there, feeling the wind, the sun, and the ground beneath her feet. She felt the strength in her legs, the rhythm of her own body, and the determination that had grown inside her. This was not the end of her journey. It was the beginning of a new life filled with possibilities. Finally, she began walking down the hill, her steps steady and confident. She felt the earth beneath her feet and the joy of movement filling her heart. Her laughter rang out softly, mingling with the morning sounds of birds and wind. Her father walked beside her, Elijah a few steps behind. Isla realized that her life had changed in an instant, not because of technology alone, but because she had chosen to embrace the challenge. She had learned that courage, determination, and trust could make the impossible possible. The mansion, the gardens, and the wide valley beyond became her world to explore. She would walk every path, feel every stone, and experience the freedom she had dreamed of for so long. And she knew, as long as Elijah was by her side, guiding when needed but letting her lead, there would be no limit to what she could achieve. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Isla walked further into the gardens, smiling, free, and alive. Today, she had taken the first steps of the rest of her life, and she knew that every step after this one would carry the promise of a bright and endless future.